On this 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time, let's take our bearings and navigate our faith together, trusting God to guide our hearts along the journey of everyday life. Today, we're invited into a profound realization about the boundless nature of God's love. Throughout human history, societies have often drawn strict lines between us and them, creating exclusive groups where only certain people belong. However, today's liturgy shatters these boundaries, revealing a God whose mercy simply cannot be contained by human borders or cultural expectations. The readings challenge us to examine our own faith and our openness to others. From the prophet Isaiah's vision of a welcoming temple to the Canaanite woman's astonishing encounter with Jesus, the central message is clear. Salvation is a gift offered to all peoples. This Sunday calls us to embrace a faith that is both deeply humble and fiercely persistent, trusting that God's grace is abundant enough for everyone. Let us chart the deeper historical and theological waters of today's readings, discovering the timeless truths that anchor our faith. First, we hear from Isaiah chapter 56. In the Old Testament, the covenant was primarily understood as an exclusive bond between God and the nation of Israel. But this post-exilic prophecy anticipates the new covenant. God declares that foreigners, those previously excluded from temple worship, who observe the Sabbath and love His name, will be brought to His holy mountain. This vision foreshadows the Catholic, meaning universal, nature of the Church, establishing God's house as a house of prayer for all peoples. This vision is perfectly echoed in Psalm 67. It's a petition not just for personal or national blessing, but that God's way be known upon earth among all nations. It's an ancient acknowledgement that Israel was blessed so that they in turn could be a blessing to the entire world. Then, in Romans chapter 11, St. Paul grapples with his fellow Jews' rejection of Christ. He emphasizes that God's gifts and the call are irrevocable. He unveils a profound theological paradox. The temporary disobedience of Israel opened the door for the evangelization of the Gentiles. Ultimately, Paul reveals that God permits disobedience so that He might pour out His mercy upon all humanity, both Jew and Gentile alike. Finally, we turn to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15. This narrative is a masterclass in faith and humility. Jesus withdraws to the pagan territory of Tyre and Sidon. When a Canaanite woman, a historical enemy of Israel, begs for her daughter's healing, Jesus initially responds with silence. Then He uses a seemingly harsh cultural proverb about not giving the children's food to dogs. But wait, in the original Greek, the word used is kunaria, meaning little dogs or house pets, rather than the term for wild street scavengers. Jesus is not rejecting her, He is testing and drawing out her faith. The woman brilliantly accepts the analogy, noting that even house pets receive the overflowing abundance, the scraps from the Master's table. Jesus publicly praises her great faith, demonstrating that grace is determined by faith, not ethnicity. To help navigate these ancient texts, let's illuminate their profound mysteries using everyday analogies as a compass for our modern faith journey. Imagine hosting a grand family dinner. You've prepared a feast for your children and you want them to sit and eat first. Suddenly, a neighbor knocks on the door, desperately asking for help. Your first instinct might be to focus only on your family. In the gospel story, it initially sounds like Jesus is doing just this, turning away a desperate mother because she isn't part of the family of Israel. It can sound shocking and even rude to our modern ears. However, think of Jesus like a master teacher who knows his student has the right answer, so he asks a difficult question just to let the student shine in front of the whole class. Jesus wasn't pushing the woman away, He was setting a stage. By using a common exclusionary attitude of His time, He gave her the opportunity to prove that her faith was stronger than any cultural barrier. The woman's response is beautiful because she doesn't argue about whether she belongs at the main table. She simply says, in effect, Lord, you are so powerful and your love is so abundant that even the leftover crumbs of your grace are enough to completely heal my daughter. She teaches us that God's grace isn't a limited pie where if someone else gets a slice, there is less for you. God's grace is overflowing, and even a tiny fraction of it can work miracles in our lives. With our spiritual bearings set, let's chart a clear course of actionable steps to steer our personal, family, and professional lives by the light of today's message. First, in your personal life, practice persistent, humble prayer. When you pray for something deeply important and God seems silent, just as Jesus was initially silent to the woman, do not give up. Trust that God hears you. Bring your needs to Him continually, not with demanding entitlement, but with the humble trust that His grace is sufficient for you. Second, in your family life, expand your family's circle of welcome. It's natural to only spend time with people who look, think, and act like us. Challenge your family to intentionally welcome an outsider, perhaps inviting a lonely neighbor to dinner or reaching out to an estranged relative. Let your home become a miniature house of prayer for all peoples. And third, in your professional life, embrace humility when facing challenges. The Canaanite woman didn't let her ego stop her from asking for help. She accepted her position and appealed to Jesus' mercy. At work, don't let pride prevent you from admitting when you are overwhelmed or lack understanding. Asking a colleague or manager for help is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. In summary, the 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time reveals the breathtaking scope of God's mercy, teaching us that His salvation is not a private club for a select few, but a universal invitation to all who approach Him with sincere hearts. Through the prophecy of Isaiah and the profound, persistent faith of the Canaanite woman in Matthew's Gospel, we learn that God's grace transcends human boundaries and expectations. Because His love is superabundant, we are called to reflect this reality by breaking down the walls of division in our own communities and persistently bringing our deepest needs to Him in prayer. By maintaining a humble, unwavering trust in God, even when He seems silent, we open ourselves fully to the overflowing abundance of His healing grace.